The call materialized out of the oppressive stillness of a Tuesday afternoon, interrupting the monotonous rhythm of shuffling papers under the flat, unforgiving glare of fluorescent office lights. Outside my window, the world seemed rendered in grayscale, a muted cityscape slumped under a sky the color of wet concrete. Rain threatened but never committed, holding the city in a state of dreary anticipation. I was Mark Riley, Director of the State Animal Welfare Enforcement Division, a title that sounded more imposing than the reality often felt. My days were a relentless juggling act, navigating the labyrinthine corridors of state bureaucracy, wrestling with budgets stretched thinner than cheap elastic, coordinating investigations that plunged my team and me into the dark underbelly of human cruelty, puppy mills operating in squalor, clandestine dogfighting rings fueled by bloodlust and gambling, heartbreaking cases of large-scale neglect where hope had long since starved. It was grueling work, emotionally taxing, leaving scars you couldn't see but felt keenly in the quiet hours. Yet, the conviction remained, a bedrock beneath the shifting sands of administrative headaches. We were the voice for the voiceless, the shield for the defenseless, holding abusers accountable, fighting for legislative change, rescuing animals from unimaginable suffering. It wasn't just a job description, it was woven into the very fiber of my being. A promise made long ago in smoky backrooms discussing policy, and reinforced every time I looked into the trusting eyes of a rescued animal. But this call, slicing through the mundane hum of the office, wasn't about statewide initiatives or budget deficits. The name flashing on the caller ID sent a jolt through me, tightening my chest, instantly dissolving the professional detachment I worked so hard to maintain. Sergeant David Carter. David. The name alone conjured a maelstrom of memories, the shared grit and terror of Helmand Province, the suffocating dust, the sudden violence, the bonds forged under fire that transcended mere friendship. We weren't brothers by birth, but the experiences etched onto our souls in that furnace bound us tighter than any blood relation. We'd returned to the world-changed men, carrying invisible shrapnel lodged deep within. David, more than most. He'd come home physically whole but psychically fractured, bearing the heavy, invisible pack of post-traumatic stress disorder. It ambushed him in the sterile brightness of supermarkets, the sudden bang of a car door, the suffocating closeness of crowds. He was a decorated hero, lauded for acts of astonishing bravery that seemed almost mythical now, back in the bewildering landscape of civilian life. Here, his greatest battles were fought in the quiet solitude of his own mind. A few years back, driven by a desire to do something tangible, something good amidst the bureaucratic morass, my division had initiated a partnership program with a veterans support organization. The goal was simple: connect highly trained service dogs with veterans wrestling with PTSD. The dogs weren't just companions, they were anchors, highly attuned partners trained to mitigate the debilitating symptoms of trauma. I remembered navigating the red tape, making the calls, pulling the strings I rarely liked to pull, ensuring David's application received priority. And then, the introduction. Buddy. Buddy. Even the name felt warm, solid. A golden retriever of stunning intelligence and empathy, his coat the color of spun sunlight, his eyes deep pools of unconditional acceptance. Buddy was more than fur and paws. He was David's lifeline, trained meticulously. He could sense the subtle shifts in David's breathing, the rising tide of anxiety. Before David himself was fully aware, he'd nudge David's hand, apply grounding pressure with his body during panic attacks, create a safe buffer in crowds, his steady presence a silent reassurance that David wasn't alone in his struggle. Buddy was the furry, four-legged anchor tethering David to the present, preventing him from being swept away by the treacherous currents of the past. Witnessing the profound, unspoken understanding between them, the gentle hand resting on golden fur, the unwavering gaze of loyalty, felt like one of the few truly meaningful victories in my often frustrating career. Mark. David's voice was a ragged edge, scraped raw, thick with an emotion I hadn't heard since the worst days overseas. It wasn't just sadness. It was a hollowed-out despair. My internal alarms didn't just ring, they screamed. David, my stoic friend, the man who faced down enemy fire and crippling anxiety with quiet fortitude, who always minimized his pain, sounded utterly broken. David, hey man, what is it? What's wrong? Are you okay? The questions tumbled out. My professional calm shattered. A choked sound, like a sob being violently suppressed. Mark, it's Buddy. He paused. The silence filled only by the sound of his ragged, uneven breathing. They took him. Mark. She took him. Took him. Who? What are you talking about? David. My mind scrambled, grasping for possibilities. An accident. Did Buddy get loose? A vet emergency. Janice Evans. That woman. From the HOA. The name was spat out, laced with a venomous mix of fear, disbelief, and impotent rage. She showed up this morning, knocked on the door, all smiles. David's voice trembled. Said there was some new county ordinance, temporary, an emergency kenneling order for rabies checks, she said. Something like that. Said it just came down. All dogs in Willow Creek had to go. Just for 24 hours. Mandatory. A cold dread began to seep into my veins, chilling me despite the stuffy office air. Janice Evans. The name resonated with unpleasant familiarity. David lived in Willow Creek Estates, one of those sprawling, meticulously planned communities where the pursuit of aesthetic uniformity often bordered on the pathological. Janice Evans was the reigning monarch of its homeowners association, a woman whose zealous enforcement of arbitrary rules and obsession with perceived property values had become legendary among the residents who dared to deviate even slightly from her narrow vision of suburban perfection. David had mentioned her before. Her campaign of petty harassment against him and Buddy, complaints about non-existent barking, citations for Buddy being momentarily unleashed inside his own fenced backyard, while David fumbled with the gate latch. Minor annoyances David had tried to brush off, not wanting to escalate conflict, already fighting enough battles within himself. She had paperwork. Mark. David continued, his voice gaining a frantic edge. Looked. Official enough. Clipboard.logos. Talked fast. County this. Public health that. Said the HOA had arranged transport. A van would take him to the county shelter. Just a quick checkup. Back tomorrow afternoon. Said everyone had to comply. David. One interrupted. My voice firm, authoritative, trying to project a calm I didn't feel. My fingers were already flying across my keyboard, navigating the county's official website, scanning recent ordinances, public health alerts. Listen to me. There is no county ordinance like that, no emergency kenneling order, nothing about mandatory rabies checks requiring removal of pets. Absolutely nothing. The screen confirmed it. Blank. Nothing remotely resembling what Janice described. A broken sound came. Through the phone. I know that now, he whispered. The words fractured. After she left, after they took him, something felt wrong. Too smooth. Too rushed. The van. It wasn't a county vehicle. Mark. It was just plain white. Had this cheap magnetic sign slapped on the side. Animal Transport Services. He choked back another sob. I called the county shelter immediately. Asked about the rabies check. asked if Buddy had arrived. They had no idea what I was talking about. No record, no ordinance, nothing. Mark, where did she take him? Where's Buddy? The raw panic in his voice was contagious. This wasn't just HOA overreach anymore. This was something calculated, deceptive, malicious. Okay, David, listen carefully. Stay calm, I commanded, trying to inject confidence into my tone, even as my own heart hammered against my ribs. Did she leave you anything? Any paperwork? A receipt? A copy of the form? Yeah, a form. I signed it. His voice was thick with self-recrimination, authorizing the temporary hold for the Robbie's check. It had the Willow Creek HOA logo, some title like Animal Control Liaison under her name, Janice Evans. She rushed me, said the van couldn't wait, other pickups to make. Buddy, he didn't want to go. Mark, he whined, pulled back on the leash, kept looking at me. I shouldn't have trusted her. Why did I trust her? His voice dissolved into helpless weeping. This stank to high heaven. Impersonating a public health official, fabricating government mandates, using fraudulent documents, luring a vulnerable individual, a veteran suffering from PTSD, into surrendering his certified service animal under false pretenses. This wasn't just a neighborhood dispute spiraling out of control. This was criminal, deliberate, predatory. David, I'm leaving now. I'm on my way, I said, already grabbing my keys, my jacket. My mind shifted. The professional training kicking in, compartmentalizing the fierce, personal anger, threatening to cloud my judgment. Do not talk to Janice. Don't call her. Don't go near her house. Lock your doors. Stay put. I'll be there as fast as I can break traffic laws. We are going to find Buddy. I promise you. I disconnected the call, my hand trembling slightly with suppressed fury. 2 immediate calls. First, 02, Sarah Jenkins, my lead field investigator, sharp, tenacious, meticulous, with an uncanny ability to see through deception. Sarah. Drop everything. Meet me at David Carter's address in Willow Creek Estates. Priority Alpha. Possible felony situation involving a service animal. Second, to my trusted contact at the local PD dispatch, requesting a discreet patrol unit establish surveillance on Janice Evans' residence. Address already on file from David's previous dismissed complaints. No lights, no sirens, just eyes on her. Report any movement, especially if she leaves the property or attempts to transport anything large. The drive felt simultaneously too fast and agonizingly slow, each red light an insult, each minute stretching into an eternity. Scenarios, ugly and increasingly dark, played out in my head. Why the elaborate deception? What was Janice's endgame? It couldn't just be about enforcing some arbitrary aesthetic standard. This level of calculated cruelty felt deeply personal, vindictive. I remembered David recounting Janice's remarks during an HOA meeting he'd reluctantly attended months ago. Something about how pets, especially large dogs like that one, lowered the prestige of the neighborhood, created messes, were noisy, and generally detracted from the exclusive atmosphere Willow Creek was meant to project. She hadn't seen Buddy as a medical necessity, a lifeline. She saw him as a furry blight on her perfect suburban canvas, a threat to her inflated property values. Pulling onto David's street felt like entering a stage set, identical houses, flawless lawns, an unnerving, artificial quiet. David's house, smaller than most, meticulously kept but lacking the ostentatious landscaping of its neighbors, seemed vulnerable. He opened the door before my knuckles even grazed the wood, his face a roadmap of despair, ashy pallor, red-rimmed eyes sunken into shadowed sockets, a tremor running through his hands he couldn't control. The house itself felt hollowed out, the silence profound and unsettling. No welcoming click of nails on the hardwood floor. No soft sigh from a favorite dog bed. No comforting weight leaning against his leg. Buddy's absence was a palpable void. "Mark, thank God you're here." The relief in his voice was fragile, paper thin over an abyss of fear. "Start from the beginning, David," I said, guiding him gently towards the sofa. "Tell me everything, every word, every detail you remember. Don't leave anything out." He recounted the morning's events again, his voice catching, his hands clenching and unclenching as he described Janice's arrival. The forced cheerfulness, the feigned sympathy about the terrible inconvenience of the non-existent ordinance, the clipboard thrust towards him, the rapid-fire delivery of bureaucratic jargon, county mandate, public health protocol, non-compliance penalties, designed to confuse and overwhelm. She'd exploited his inherent trust. Perhaps a moment of PTSD-induced disorientation, pressing him to sign quickly. She'd emphasized repeatedly it was temporary, just a formality. Buddy would be safely returned tomorrow. The plain white van lurking at the curb. The impassive face of the male driver David had never seen before. Buddy's resistance, the whine, the backward glance filled with confusion and trust. That final look was now a burning coal in David's memory, searing him with guilt. Sarah Jenkins arrived minutes later, her presence immediately grounding, calm, professional. Her sharp eyes missed nothing. While she carefully photographed and bagged the fraudulent form Janice had left, a cheap piece of paper, HOA letterhead clumsily mimicking official formatting, filled with nonsensical phrases like Canine Health Mandates Section 7B. I got back on the phone. My voice remained level, professional, but inside, a cold rage was building. Systematically, I contacted every licensed animal shelter, boarding kennel, veterinary clinic, and registered animal rescue organization within a 50-mile radius, then expanded the radius to 75, gave Buddy's detailed description, microchip number, David's name, Janice Evans' name. The answer was universally the same. No golden retriever matching Buddy's description admitted. No record of any pickup by an entity called Animal Transport Services or anything associated with the Willow Creek HOA. No knowledge of any emergency rabies check protocol. Nothing. The icy dread intensified, constricting my chest. If Buddy wasn't at a legitimate facility, where was he? The possibilities turned darker. Unlicensed. Unregulated backyard breeders or kennels, known for acquiring animals through dubious means. Transport across state lines to be sold. Or something far worse. Something whispered about in the darkest corners of animal welfare investigations. The calculated nature of the deception, the use of a fake transport van, the deliberate targeting of a service animal. This wasn't just harassment escalating. It felt like abduction with a sinister, predetermined outcome. "Mark," Sarah said, holding the bagged form carefully. She pointed with a gloved finger. "Look at the signature line. Receiving agent facility representative. It's just Janice Evans' signature. No facility name, no agent ID." She signed, effectively, as taking custody herself. She either took him herself, or she directly instructed that driver, I muttered. The pieces clicking into a disturbing pattern. Okay. Time for Plan B. I dialed Lieutenant Miller at the local PD, a solid, experienced cop I'd worked with on previous cases involving animal cruelty linked to other crimes. I laid out the situation concisely: fraudulent documentation, impersonation of an official, potential larceny of a certified service animal belonging to a combat veteran. the complete lack of record at any legitimate facility. Miller listened intently, his responses clipped, professional. He immediately recognized the gravity, the potential for serious felony charges. He confirmed his officers were still maintaining discreet surveillance on Janice Evans' house on the adjacent block. She was home. Her pristine white SUV was parked in the driveway. No sign of the white van. We need to talk to her. Miller, I said. Now. But this needs a careful approach. She's manipulative, clearly capable of elaborate deception. Based on Carter's statement and the evidence of the fraudulent document, I can have my officers pick her up, bring her downtown for formal questioning. Miller offered. I considered it for a moment. Bringing her in might yield results under formal interrogation, but it might also make her lawyer up immediately, shut down completely. A direct, albeit controlled, confrontation first might yield more. See her reaction. Gauge her response. Maybe catch her in a lie that could strengthen the case or lead us to Buddy faster. No, not yet. Let's pay Mrs. Evans a personal visit first. A knock and talk. Me, Jenkins, and Carter. See what she says to our faces. My presence as state director added weight she couldn't easily dismiss. Miller, have your units maintain position. Stay out of sight unless I call for backup or she tries to bolt. Understood. Mark, proceed with caution. Let me know the second you need us. David, I said, turning to my friend, whose face was a mask of numb dread. We're going to talk to Janice. The first need you to stay calm. Let me and Sarah handle the questioning. Just being there, your presence, might be enough pressure. He nodded mutely, squaring his shoulders, the ingrained discipline of a soldier momentarily overlaying the raw grief. We drove the few short blocks to Janice Evans' residence. It was a larger model than David's, the landscaping ostentatiously perfect, bordering on sterile. Topiary shrubs tortured into unnatural shapes stood guard beside a porch, adorned with seasonal decorations that seemed more obligatory than cheerful. The house radiated an air of smug, untouchable propriety. As our unmarked car pulled to the curb, the front door opened, almost as if on cue. Janice Evans emerged, holding a ridiculously ornate watering can, poised to tend to a hanging basket overflowing with unnaturally vibrant petunias. She was dressed in crisp white caprice and a floral blouse, a picture of benign suburban domesticity. Spotting David walking towards her house flanked by me and Sarah, clearly official in our demeanor. Sarah holding a folio, me with my state credentials visible, her practiced smile faltered, tightening at the corners for a microsecond before stretching back into place. Overly bright, artificially welcoming. Her eyes, however, darted between us, assessing, calculating. Wary. David! What a surprise! Her voice was pitched slightly too high. And, forgive me, you are. She looked pointedly at me. Director Mark Riley. State Animal Welfare Enforcement. This is Investigator Sarah Jenkins. I didn't offer a handshake. We need to talk to you about Buddy. Janice feigned confusion, tilting her head slightly. Buddy. Oh, your dog. David. Yes. Is everything all right? Did the county call? I assume the checkup went smoothly. The performance was almost seamless, but the underlying tension was palpable. Let's dispense with the pleasantries. Janice, I said, keeping my voice low, level, devoid of overt aggression, but heavy with implication. There is no county ordinance. There was no mandated rabies check. You fabricated that entire story. Now, where is David's service dog? The mask of faux concern didn't just crack, it dissolved, replaced by a hardening of her features, a tightening of her jaw. The overly bright smile vanished, leaving behind a thin line of displeasure. I have absolutely no idea what you are implying. Director Riley, I received official notification regarding a temporary public health measure. I was merely assisting Mr. Carter, a resident in my community, in complying with that directive. She sounded practiced, reciting lines she'd clearly prepared. A notice you created, Sarah interjected, her voice cool, precise, on your computer. Using HOA letterhead, along with the fraudulent authorization form you had Mr. Carter sign under false pretenses, larceny, Miss S. Evans, particularly of a certified service animal, is a felony. Impersonating a public health official to facilitate that crime is also a felony. Janice attempted a scoff, folding her arms across her chest, a caricature of indignation. That is preposterous. I was acting in good faith based on the information provided to me as HOA president. Perhaps the county made an error in communication, or the shelter misplaced the intake paperwork. These bureaucratic mix-ups happen all the time, as I'm sure you know. Director. She waved a dismissive hand, trying to regain control of the narrative. Which shelter? Janice. The first pressed, stepping slightly closer, invading her carefully maintained personal space. Give me the name of the specific facility where Buddy was allegedly taken. The driver must have told you. A flicker of panic in her eyes. They darted nervously towards her house, then back to me. I honestly don't recall the exact name, she stammered, the facade crumbling rapidly now. It was all rather rushed. The driver, he handled the logistics, the drop-off. It was all very official sounding. One of those county annex facilities, I believe. The driver you hired, Janice, I countered, leaning in slightly. In the unmarked white van with the magnetic sign. We've already contacted every licensed shelter, kennel, clinic, and rescue within a 75-mile radius. Buddy isn't at any of them. No one has any record of him. David, who had been standing silently beside me, his knuckles white, finally spoke. His voice was low, trembling with a desperate plea that tore at my heart. Janice, please, just tell us where he is. What happened to him? I just want Buddy back, please. Janice turned her gaze on David, and in that instant, the carefully constructed veneer of concerned neighbor disintegrated completely, revealing something truly reptilian beneath. Contempt, cold and sharp, flickered in her eyes, mixed with an exasperated irritation, as if David's grief was merely an annoying inconvenience. Honestly, David, she said, her tone shifting, adopting a sickeningly condescending pity that was far more cruel than outright anger. Perhaps this is all for the best. Don't you think? A large animal like that, it's a significant responsibility, especially for someone in your situation. The insinuation hung heavy in the air. And frankly, she continued, warming to her theme, the barking was becoming a persistent issue for several neighbors. Property values. You understand. They are paramount. Maybe you should consider a smaller companion, a cat, perhaps. Or maybe no pets at all for a while. It would certainly simplify things for everyone in the neighborhood. The casual, breathtaking cruelty of her words, the dismissal of Buddy as a mere nuisance, an obstacle to maintaining property values. The callous disregard for the lifeline he represented for David landed like a physical blow. David flinched, recoiling as if struck, rendered speechless by the sheer, monstrous inhumanity of it. My own control, stretched taut, snapped. The carefully banked anger surged, hot and fierce. Professionalism warred with the primal urge to protect my friend. Where is the D-dog? I demanded, my voice dropping, each word bitten off, resonating with the full weight of my position and my personal fury. I took another step closer, my shadow falling over her. Janice physically recoiled this time, startled by the intensity, perhaps finally realizing the gravity of her situation. That the presence of the state animal welfare director and his investigator wasn't a casual inquiry she could brush off with HOA platitudes. "Look, I don't know anything else," she snapped, her voice suddenly shrill, betraying fear beneath the anger. She spun around, heading for the sanctuary of her front door. "You are trespassing on my property. Leave now, or I will call the police." "We already have officers staged just down the street, Miss S. Evans," Sarah stated, her voice perfectly calm, lethally precise. "And Lieutenant Miller has Mr. Carter's sworn statement detailing fraud, impersonation, and theft by deception. You can choose to cooperate with us now. Provide the location of the dog, or we can escalate this through official channels. Your choice." Janice didn't reply. She wrenched open her front door and slammed it shut behind her. The sharp crack echoed unnervingly in the manicured quiet of the street. We stood there, on her perfect emerald lawn, the silence thick with unspoken questions and the rapidly curdling possibilities. Where had she taken him? Why the elaborate charade just to get rid of a dog she considered inconvenient? Her words about property values, her utter lack of empathy, echoed in my mind. Could she truly be that pathologically callous, to value curb appeal over the life, the necessity of a veteran service animal? My phone buzzed. A text message from Lieutenant Miller. "Unit observing rear reports. Subject made multiple trips to backyard shed, approx 1 hour before your arrival. Unclear what was carried. Maintaining visual. A backyard shed. Not a transport to a distant location." My stomach twisted into a tight, cold knot. The elaborate deception, the fake van, the lack of shelter records, the callous dismissal. It wasn't about relocating Buddy. It was about making him disappear. Permanently. "Here. Oh, dear God," David whispered beside me, his face paling further, the horrifying implication dawning in his eyes simultaneously. He swayed, putting a hand out to steady himself against Sarah's arm. "Sarah," I said, my voice tight, struggling to remain clinical. "Contact Miller immediately. Tell him we need an emergency search warrant for this property, house, and curtilage. Specifically that shed. Probable cause, felony larceny of a service animal, fraud. Impersonation, and now, add potential aggravated animal cruelty and tampering with physical evidence based on Carter's statement. The fraudulent document, Evans's evasiveness, lack of location provided for the animal, and the suspicious activity reported at the shed. Tell him highest priority, expedited review. Request animal control forensic veterinarians be placed on standby, and notify the tactical liaison if she's actively destroying evidence of a felony, possibly involving cruelty." My voice trailed off. The implication was clear. We needed to move fast, secure the scene, prevent any further interference. Janice Evans had demonstrated calculated criminality. Her reaction to being cornered was unpredictable. My authority as state director allowed me to request tactical support in situations involving aggravated cruelty, obstruction, or potential danger to officers or evidence. This situation ticked multiple boxes, while Sarah relayed the urgent request, her voice low and businesslike despite the grim circumstances. I turned back to David. His face was a mask of pure anguish. The fragile hope that had flickered moments ago extinguished, replaced by a suffocating, terrifying understanding. "Mark, she couldn't have. She wouldn't. Not Buddy. Not like that." I had no comforting lies to offer. The scenario spooling out in my mind was the darkest imaginable. born from Janice Evans' toxic obsession with control, appearances, and property values. A grotesque equation where a dog's life, a veteran's lifeline, was worth less than a minor percentage point on a Zillow estimate. A woman capable of looking her neighbor in the eye and suggesting his grief might be for the best. The wait for the warrant was agonizing, time stretching and distorting. Each tick of the clock felt like a hammer blow against my ribs. David paced the sidewalk like a caged animal, unable to stand still, his tormented gaze fixed on Janice's house, specifically on the innocuous-looking beige shed partially visible over the pristine white vinyl fence in her backyard. The structure seemed to pulse with a malevolent energy. More patrol cars arrived, discreetly sealing off both ends of the street. Neighbors, alerted by the growing police presence, began to appear behind curtains, their faces registering curiosity morphing into alarm. The artificial tranquility of Willow Creek Estates was fraying at the edges. Finally, Sarah's phone rang. She listened intently, nodded. "Confirmed," she said, meeting my eyes, her own expression grim. "Warrant signed by Judge Miller. It's electronic. Miller has it. Tactical team is less than 5 minutes out. They were already mobilizing based on your heads up." The shift was immediate, decisive. The quiet street transformed into a scene of controlled urgency. The black SWAT van, which had been waiting discreetly around the corner, rolled silently into position. Officers clad in protective gear, deployed with quiet efficiency, establishing a secure perimeter around Janice's property. Lieutenant Miller arrived, stepping out of his car, electronic tablet displaying the signed warrant in hand. I authorized Dr. Ramirez, one of my most experienced animal welfare forensic veterinarians, who had arrived with animal control support units, to accompany the entry team, body cam activated, to document any potential evidence related to animal cruelty. Standard procedure, but it felt anything but standard today. "Mrs. Evans," Lieutenant Miller's voice, amplified by a bullhorn, boomed across the manicured lawn, startlingly loud in the tense silence. "This is the Willow Creek Police Department. We have a lawfully obtained warrant to search these premises. Open the front door immediately." Silence from within the house. Only the rustle of leaves in the slight breeze. "Mrs. Evans, I am ordering you to open the door now. Failure to comply will result in forced entry." Still nothing. An unnerving, defiant silence. Miller gave the signal. The tactical team moved, breaching the front door with swift, practiced, percussive force. The sound cracked through the suburban quiet like a gunshot. Simultaneously, another small team moved rapidly towards the backyard gate, heading for the shed. I stood rooted to the sidewalk beside David, my heart pounding a heavy, frantic rhythm against my sternum. A sickening cocktail of grim determination, cold dread, and boiling rage churned inside me. Across the street, a neighbor held their smartphone aloft, the small red recording light, a malevolent eye, capturing the entire operation. Officers cleared the house room by room. Their voices, clipped and professional, drifted out. Then, Janice's voice, shrill with outrage. "What is the meaning of this intrusion? Get out of my house. How dare you break down my door? I'll sue. MAAM. You were given lawful orders to open the door. We have a warrant." An officer responded calmly, followed by the distinct click of handcuffs. Just then, a crackle came over Miller's radio, the voice urgent, strained. "Lieutenant, team at the shed requesting your presence." And Ramirez, "We've found Jesus, confirming potential evidence of aggravated cruelty. Need forensics back here ASAP." The air rushed out of my lungs. Ice water flooded my veins. David let out a strangled cry, a sound of pure primal agony. staggering back against the side of my car, as if his legs could no longer support him. I motioned sharply for a uniformed officer to stay with David, provide support. Then I broke into a run towards the back gate, Sarah matching my stride. The gate was already open. The shed door stood ajar, even from several feet away. The smell hit us, a harsh, acrid wave of bleach, so strong it stung the nostrils, attempting desperately, futilely, to mask a deeper, sickeningly sweet and metallic undertone. The smell of death trying to be chemically erased. Dr. Ramirez stood just inside, her face pale, grim. She looked up as we approached, her eyes conveying everything. Inside the cramped space, the beam from an officer's flashlight cut through the dimness, illuminating dust motes dancing in the chemical haze. It swept across the stained concrete floor, revealing darker patches where bleach hadn't fully penetrated. Disturbing smear patterns hastily, incompletely scrubbed. The light lingered on a crumpled blue tarp shoved into a corner, then moved to a workbench cluttered with gardening tools. Beside a pair of thick rubber gloves lay several heavy-duty black trash bags, bulging ominously, tied shut. Resting on the workbench, shockingly clean amidst the clutter, were veterinary-grade syringes, and beside them, horrifyingly, unequivocally, lay two small, empty glass vials. The labels were clear: sodium pentobarbital, the drug used for euthanasia, the final, irreversible solution. One of my senior animal welfare officers, face ashen, pointed a gloved hand towards the trash bags, his voice low, strained. We found canine hair embedded in the concrete seams, despite the bleach. Significant blood traces under the tarp, confirmed with luminol, and, inside the top bag, he held up a clear evidence bag. Inside, nestled amongst other refuse, was a distinctive red nylon collar. Attached were small, metallic tags that glinted dully in the flashlight beam. Buddy, owner, D. Carter, with David's phone number etched below. Buddy's collar. The horrific truth crashed down with sickening finality. Janice Evans hadn't just deceived David. She hadn't just stolen his service dog. She hadn't dumped him or sold him. Driven by her twisted obsession with property values and appearances, she, or someone acting under her explicit direction, had lured Buddy into this shed. This small, mundane backyard structure had become an execution chamber. And then, with cold, calculated efficiency, she had attempted to sanitize the scene, intending to dispose of his remains like household trash, erasing every trace of the loyal companion she deemed an inconvenience. The sheer premeditated malice of it stole my breath. This wasn't an act of neglect, or ignorance, or even sudden rage. This was methodical extermination. This was a profound violation, not just of law, but of basic decency, of the sacred trust between humans and the animals who serve them. I felt bile rise in my throat and turned away, stumbling back out into the fresh air, gasping. I heard Janice's continued shrieks of denial echoing from the front of the house as officers escorted her, handcuffed and struggling, towards a waiting patrol car. The neighbor's camera faithfully recorded her enraged, desperate face. "It wasn't me," she screamed, her voice cracking with fury and panic. "I hired a service, a disposal service, for problem animals. It's perfectly legal. Check the records. There's no legal service." Janice. Lieutenant Miller's voice cut through her tirade, heavy with disgust. "That comes to your backyard shed to illegally euthanize your neighbor's service dog and dispose of the body. You're under arrest for aggravated animal cruelty, tampering with evidence, fraud, and larceny." I walked slowly, heavily, back towards the front street, back towards David. He was sitting on the curb now, head buried in his hands, his body racked with silent, convulsive sobs. The confirmation of Buddy's fate, the brutal, intimate horror of how his loyal friend, his anchor, had spent his final moments, had shattered the fragile composure he fought so hard to maintain. There were no words. What could possibly be said in the face of such monstrous betrayal, such profound loss? I sat down on the curb beside him, the concrete cool beneath me, and put a hand on his shaking shoulder. We sat there in shared silence, surrounded by the flashing chaos of red and blue lights, reflecting off the perfect, impassive faces of the houses in Willow Creek Estates. The pristine facade had been irrevocably ripped away, revealing the festering ugliness Janice Evans had nurtured behind her manicured lawn and her tyrannical HOA rule. The cost wasn't just in property values, it was measured in shattered lives and extinguished loyalty. The raid, Janice's dramatic arrest, the horrifying discovery within the shed, captured not only by official body cams, but immortalized by the neighbor's viral video, detonated across the internet with explosive force. Hashtag Justice for Buddy. Ho Tyranny. Hashtag Veteran Betrayed. Hashtag Janice Evans Monster. The story eclipsed even the recent HOA scandal involving General Bell, tapping into a deeper, more visceral vein of public outrage. The image of a decorated veteran weeping uncontrollably on a suburban curb after learning his service dog had been secretly euthanized and nearly disposed of like trash by his HOA president neighbor, juxtaposed with footage of that same neighbor shrieking denials while being led away in handcuffs by SWAT officers, created a perfect storm of fury. My office, the State Animal Welfare Enforcement Division, became ground zero. Phones rang off the hook. Email servers overloaded. Messages demanding the harshest possible penalty for Janice Evans flooded in alongside heartbroken condolences and offers of support for David. Veterans organizations nationwide released furious statements, demanding accountability and legislative action. Animal rights groups mobilized, offering pro bono legal support, pledging to see Janice prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. The story dominated news cycles for days. The governor called me personally, his voice tight with anger, demanding a full, unvarnished briefing, expressing his profound disgust, and pledging the full resources of the state to ensure justice prevailed. Janice Evans found herself utterly isolated. The Willow Creek HOA board dissolved in disgrace within 24 hours, its members scattering like cockroaches in the sudden glare of national condemnation. Janice, facing a slew of felony charges, aggravated animal cruelty, a first-degree felony due to the premeditation and torture involved, tampering with physical evidence, larceny of a service animal, fraudulent schemes, impersonating an official, was denied bail due to the severity of the crimes and perceived flight risk. Her husband, a bewildered accountant who claimed total ignorance of her horrific actions, a claim met with intense public skepticism, filed for divorce and issued a public statement condemning her deeds, effectively abandoning her. Her carefully constructed world, built on social standing and neighborhood dominance, imploded. She became a pariah, her name instantly synonymous with calculated, suburban evil. The subsequent investigation pieced together the chilling timeline. Janice, increasingly fixated on Buddy as a detriment to the neighborhood's image and her perceived authority, had methodically researched animal disposal methods online for weeks. Frustrated by the refusal of licensed veterinarians to euthanize a healthy animal without owner consent, she sourced the sodium pentobarbital illegally through shadowy online forums catering to disgruntled breeders and fringe groups. She then concocted the fake ordinance scheme, hiring an unscrupulous, unlicensed hauler, a day laborer with a van found through an anonymous online ad, paid in cash, specifically instructing him to transport Buddy not to any shelter, but directly to her property, using the fraudulent paperwork to deceive David. The laborer, later apprehended, claimed he was told it was an aggressive dog being taken for mandated euthanasia, admitting he suspected something was off but took the cash job anyway. He confirmed Janice met him upon arrival and took possession of Buddy herself. The forensic evidence from the shed was damning, confirming Janice alone administered the lethal injection. The cleaning supplies, the trash bags, it was all part of her meticulous, cold-blooded plan to erase Buddy, silencing the perceived threat to her reign and her property values. David was adrift in a sea of grief, haunted by Buddy's final, confused look, tormented by guilt over trusting Janice. But the outpouring of support was immense, a tidal wave of compassion pushing back against the darkness. A crowdfunding campaign, started spontaneously by a local veterans group, raised hundreds of thousands of dollars for David's ongoing therapy, for legal expenses, for a memorial dedicated to Buddy to be placed in the local veterans park. Neighbors, many of whom had previously kept their distance, perhaps intimidated by Janice, now stopped by constantly, bringing meals, offering quiet words of support, expressing their collective shame and fury. David wasn't alone. The community, both local and virtual, wrapped its arms around him, as director, and more importantly, as David's friend. I poured my own grief and righteous anger into ensuring accountability. We built an ironclad case against Janice Evans, David's heart-wrenching testimony. The fraudulent form, Sarah Jenkins' meticulous investigation notes, the neighbor's viral video, the irrefutable forensic evidence from the shed, Janice's own incriminating statements caught on body cam during her arrest, the digital footprint of her online searches and illegal drug procurement. The evidence was a mountain. Her defense attorneys attempted various strategies, trying to shift blame to the non-existent disposal service, arguing Janice panicked, suggesting she didn't personally administer the injection, directly contradicted by forensic trace evidence on her clothing and the syringes. They even attempted to paint David as an unstable owner, a desperate, despicable tactic that backfired spectacularly, further enraging the public and solidifying the prosecution's narrative of Janice as a predatory manipulator. The trial was brief, the outcome never truly in doubt. Snippets of testimony, captured by courtroom artists and reported verbatim, underscored the horror. Prosecutor, Miss S. Evans. When you injected Buddy with sodium pentobarbital in your shed, did he struggle? Janice, voice thin, defiant. I hired a service. I wasn't there for that part. Prosecutor, forensic evidence places you in that shed. Miss S. Evans, your DNA on the syringe plunger, Buddy's blood spatter on your shoes recovered from your closet. Did he struggle? Defense attorney, objection. Assumes facts not in evidence. Inflammatory. Judge, overruled. Answer the question. Miss S. Evans. Janice, looking away. Voice barely audible. There might have been some movement, a collective gasp. Murmurs of disgust ripple through the courtroom gallery. Prosecutor, and why? Miss S. Evans. Why go to such elaborate, illegal lengths to kill your neighbor's service dog? Janice, he was problematic. The barking, the effect on the neighborhood standards. Prosecutor, problematic, or just inconvenient to your desire for control and inflated property values. Janice, our community has rules, standards, appearance matters. David Carter, sitting in the front row, quietly weeps, comforted by fellow veterans. The jury deliberated for less than 2 hours. The verdict, guilty, on every single charge. Janice Evans remained impassive as the verdicts were read, staring straight ahead, a final mask of defiant denial firmly in place. The sentencing hearing was packed. David read a victim impact statement, his voice shaking but clear, speaking not of vengeance, but of the irreplaceable bond shattered, the profound sense of security stolen along with Buddy. He spoke of Buddy's unwavering loyalty, his gentle nature, the quiet heroism he displayed every day simply by being present. The judge, visibly moved, condemned Janice's actions in blistering terms, citing the extreme callousness, the chilling premeditation, the monstrous betrayal of trust, and the profound disrespect shown not only to an animal companion, but to a veteran who served this country. Citing the aggravated nature of the cruelty and the targeting of a service animal, the judge imposed the maximum consecutive sentences allowable under state law. Janice Evans was sentenced to a lengthy term in state prison, far exceeding typical sentences for animal cruelty cases before Buddy's law. Substantial restitution was ordered to David, along with punitive damages designed to strip her of any remaining assets. Civil lawsuits ensured that the house she worshipped, the symbol of the status she killed to protect, was eventually seized and sold. The proceeds awarded to David and animal welfare charities. Janice Evans lost everything. The public outrage, however, demanded more than just one conviction. The case became a catalyst, working tirelessly with legislators, fueled by David's powerful advocacy, testimony from veterans groups, and mountains of supportive letters from the public. We championed Buddy's law. It wasn't easy, facing lobbying from some breeder groups and opposition from those resistant to stricter regulations. But the tide of public opinion was undeniable. The law passed with overwhelming bipartisan support. It created specific felony charges for harming or killing a service animal, criminalized the acquisition of any animal through fraud or deception, implemented cradle-to-grave tracking for euthanasia drugs, and provided enhanced legal protections for pet owners facing malicious neighbor disputes or HOA overreach. It was a landmark achievement, born from tragedy. Ensuring Buddy's death would save countless other lives. David never truly got over Buddy. Scars like that don't disappear. You learn to live with them. But slowly, painstakingly, with intensive therapy, the unwavering support of his friends, his community, and eventually, the hesitant welcoming of a new service dog, a gentle black Labrador named Hope, he began to piece his life back together. He became a reluctant but powerful advocate, sharing his story, fighting for stricter enforcement of Buddy's law, ensuring his beloved companion's memory shone as a beacon against cruelty. I still visit David regularly, see the lingering sadness in his eyes, but also the returning glint of resilience, the quiet strength that saw him through war and its aftermath. Hope is often curled at his feet, a watchful, loving presence. Willow Creek Estates has a new, humbled HOA, forever marked by the scandal, and Janice Evans, stripped of her power, her privilege, her freedom, serves her time. A stark cautionary tale whispered in neighborhoods across the country, a chilling reminder that monstrous cruelty can lurk behind the most pristine facades, and that justice, sometimes, though born from unbearable pain, can ultimately prevail. Buddy's light, so cruelly extinguished in that backyard shed, ultimately illuminated a path towards greater protection for those who cannot speak for themselves. His legacy endures,